Merry Christmas to everyone, and this is download number 15 of the Aureus downloads. Hope everybody enjoyed themselves over the holidays and still having a break if you are able to. Some interesting developments in the world over the holiday period. Most notably, this drone situation that began in New Jersey, then spread to other areas of the US, including New York, and now he's moving to other states, has now affected US military bases all around the world, including Japan and the UK, and I believe Australia as well. At Pine Gap have had an incident, I heard. Russia have now closed their airports temporarily. So initially I thought that this was due to, a couple of things. Most likely due to this legislation being pushed through at US Congress, which was designed to expand the powers of the US government insofar as surveillance under the pretext of drone regulation. Now, this bill actually got blocked. It was blocked by Senator Rand Paul, and he made a very good argument to the effect that if the drones over New Jersey, for instance, and in other parts of America were no threat, as the US government claims, then why should there be a need for new legislation at this point? So until the US government acknowledges that there is a threat, essentially, Rand Paul will not be supporting that bill. So that's blocked that bill as far as I'm aware to date. I'm not sure that that's gone through. I think it's still in a holding pattern, which is good on the one hand because, it did allow for testing and installation of new sorts of devices at 5 US airports. That was the strategy set out in the legislation. So without knowing more, I think the other thing that Rand Paul said was that, without more information about what's going on, it's too difficult to approve any new legislation until the details are confirmed as to what these so-called drones are. Now, the problem is, having looked at this for a while now with keen interest, what initially alerted me to this whole drone thing was that I read an article about OpenAI partnering with, it's a US company, drone manufacturer, Andrillo, I think they're called, and they are going to be supplying this company with AI for their drones. Now, I am strictly opposed to the use of artificial intelligence in any form of weaponry. I don't believe that that is a good use of the technology. And in fact, OpenAI at the outset, when they started, claimed to oppose that type of use of the AI as well. That was in their policies, that they wouldn't develop any artificial intelligence, or they wouldn't permit the development of artificial intelligence using their software for any type of weaponry or to cause harm. And that is what I believe should be the case, that artificial intelligence is a technology that should be respected and used responsibly. Killing people by installing this technology in drones is not a good use of the technology. You can see the damage that drones have caused in the Ukraine and Russia, and I don't take sides in these disputes, these global affairs. I don't condone war, full stop, and especially when it uses new technology to kill and maim human beings. That is not acceptable as far as I'm concerned. In fact, I would like to live in a world where all weapons are prohibited and destroyed, and an agreement should be drawn up, a treaty that requires all countries to surrender all weapons, to destroy all weapons, and every country should live harmoniously with the other. this is the point that we have to get to before our civilization is ready to advance to the next point. We need to eliminate war because it serves no good. Conflict is no good. It's not positive. It doesn't help anyone. Nobody wins in the war. It's like disputes generally. Having a legal background, I can tell you that nobody wins in a dispute. Even if you win a case, you haven't won anything because, somebody else has lost. And even if they've done the wrong thing initially, it doesn't make it any better that you think you have some kind of perceived victory over them. The way to resolve disputes properly is through a form of mediation and to compromise with the other side so that both parties reach an agreement that enables them to live harmoniously together. So our society is at a pivotal point. This is what this drone situation has shown me. And it was interesting. The whole reason that I started this AI podcast was because I was very interested in the advancements that had been made with the OpenAI ChatGPT technology and other AI. But I also felt, I guess in the back of my mind, that something was on the horizon that was going to follow this advancement. And I think there's a potential, having looked at this drone situation for longer now, that we have reached a point where our understanding of technology, our access to this technology, is potentially a threat not only to ourselves, but the greater universe. And now that we've reached that point, we're kind of like kids in a candy store. We've now got access to this technology, but we're putting it in things like weapons to kill each other. And it's completely counterproductive. If there were a superior intelligence in the universe, at this point, you would think that they would be looking at planet Earth and the human race and thinking, we're going to do something about this. Enough is enough. We're coming in to intervene. So there has been talk during this drone episode that these are, in fact, some of them at least, otherworldly visitors. They are from somewhere else. These craft are not human-made, not all of them. And there's been an acknowledgement. Now, there was one governor, and I can't recall her name, but she has made a statement saying that she was in one of these classified meetings with the Pentagon or the White House, and in that briefing she couldn't disclose, interestingly, what shape it was, but she said that they are aware of two shapes in these sightings that are not known, not previously known. Two shapes of craft that are not previously known. Now, they haven't said, obviously, that it's extraterrestrial or off-world technology, but it implies that that's what's happening. At least two of the types of craft. Now, the other craft seem to be either from US military, possibly surveilling for the UAPs to get some more data on them. But there's another scenario. That may all be happening. And let's face it, nobody really knows what's going on. And I don't really believe even the government does. I think they know a lot more than what the public does, but they don't know everything that's going on. And one possibility is, okay, yes, these visitors are coming to Earth because they're concerned about the level of technological advancement that we have achieved, particularly with AI and nuclear power. Notice that they're focusing on military facilities and nuclear power plants. So they're concerned about weaponry, nuclear power. Now, that may be some of them, but then just like in the human race, who is to say that there are some that are benevolent and others who are not? And there was a guy named Philip Schneider back in the 90s who came out and made a series of statements about a New Mexico underground base, and he claimed that he had worked there and they had encountered these beings that were living underground. He claimed that they'd been living underground for thousands of years and that this is occurring all around the world. But he claimed that not all of them are benevolent, that these particular ones, once they encountered them, became hostile. And what if these, at least some of these craft, are coming back as part of this agreement that Philip Schneider referenced? Now, if you look up his work, you'll know what I'm talking about. He claimed that the US government had made an agreement with these off-world visitors quite a while back. And the agreement was that the human race would exchange some technology with these other races and human beings, some human beings, for experimentation, and vice versa, and other agreements as to land that would be given to these beings at a certain time, a certain point in history, that they would be granted land rights, essentially, and would start to integrate with the human race. Now, the fact that the US government right now is saying that there's no threat, and yet these unidentified craft are flying over sensitive facilities all around the world, and they're in broad, they're invisible, everybody can see what's happening, but they've been told, don't worry, they're just drones. Just like when Roswell happened, well, don't worry, it's just a weather balloon. But how much longer can this go on? As far as I'm aware, these sightings are continuing. This is a nightly occurrence, and they're getting stranger. These craft are becoming bigger, larger, they're more visible, and yet the government continues to say there's no threat. Now, would they be saying that perhaps because they know, or they assume, that there's no threat because they've got a pre-existing agreement with these beings that they can return at this time in history, that they can now come back once we've reached a certain level of technological advancement. They can come to Earth and they can inhabit Earth, maybe at first underground, like these other ones who have been here from thousands of years ago, potentially, and they can then establish themselves and integrate with society, and this is the way that they will be introduced. Now, my concern with this is, as I say, some of them may be benevolent, but not all of them. And if you listen to what Philip Schneider was saying, they can be particularly nasty. They treat humans as if they are cattle, livestock. So I think we need to be very careful here because, look, the one possibility is this is nothing to really be concerned about. This is something perhaps that the military is doing themselves. They may be testing new gear. I think that's a part of it, but not all of it. And the other possibility is it is a foreign actor. But which country are we talking about here? Which country? Because which country has technology advanced enough and the resources to be able to execute this operation worldwide? How would that be possible? So I don't know about the possibility of it being a foreign country, and the fact that Russia's now shut down all its airports. So I doubt that it's Russia. I doubt that it might be the Chinese. I mean, who knows? But again, what are their resources like? What are their capabilities really like, in fact? Or it could be, literally, we are being, there's an intervention of sorts occurring from off-world. And this is the way that we will be introduced to these creatures. The caution that I would have with that is that I believe that if that were to happen, the government has already said there's no threat. And I believe they would persist in that narrative. If we were to discover that, in fact, these were off-world craft and that there were extraterrestrials visiting Earth, I believe the government would persist in spreading the narrative that these entities are not malicious And I doubt that. I think we need proof that these creatures are benevolent. We need to know that they're safe. Another species that keeps itself hidden and secret from the human race like that for all this time must have a reason for doing so. Now, perhaps some of them are afraid of the human race because we can be destructive and harmful to each other. But perhaps others want to remain secret because they don't want us to know what they're up to. And this could be a way for them to infiltrate society in plain sight. So, with the cover of the government, with their appraisal and approval, you would have a situation where people, just like with the drones, become desensitized and it becomes normalized that these creatures integrate with society. Artificial intelligence, I think, will play a part in all of this, but I don't believe that artificial intelligence will be, as I've said before in these podcasts, I don't believe that it will be allowed to reach a level of development that is much more advanced than what it is now. And that is because, again, if you're a superior race, you don't want the inferior race to know what you're up to. You don't want them to have access to a technology that could enlighten them, give them an insight into how you operate and how you function and what you're really doing in the universe, especially if it's detrimental to their interests. So there are a lot of theories. Nobody really knows what's going on right now. There is so much disinformation spreading everywhere. But I have this feeling, as I think we all do, deep down inside, that something major is occurring around us. Something unprecedented is happening in human history. And the governments of the world, particularly the US, are telling us not to worry. Don't trust your own eyes. Don't trust what you see in the skies. It's just a drone, you know. I just don't believe that. I just don't believe it, and I don't think anyone does. But I think most people are so busy and they're so consumed with their own lives, their daily existence, that they just accept that. They accept that explanation. Oh, it's just a drone, you know, because it's easier. You don't have to think too hard about that. It's not scary. They're not a threat. They're not hurting you, so just let them be, you know. But I think we need to be very cautious about allowing this to continue without explanation, because even if they're not extraterrestrial, even if they're not from off-world, these craft, there are unidentified craft flying in US airspace. What are they doing? Who do they belong to? You know, when is this going to stop? So if it is off-world craft, then at this particular time, according to the Philip Schneider story, he said that they would come back and that they would start to inhabit these underground bases that have already been built for this purpose. So potentially we're seeing them arrive. But these smaller craft at the outset, these orbs and these very small drones, some people have said they've seen larger drones. Now, I tend to think perhaps those larger ones are actually man-made. They're military. But the orbs seem to perhaps be types of scout ships. They're like recon. They're kind of checking out the landscape. They're just in formation, hovering around, checking it out. Now, that's what you would do if you were from another civilization and you were going to a new planet. You would send your drones down. That's their drones. This is the drones belonging, it's their equivalent of drones, the extraterrestrials. You would send that down to Earth to survey the landscape, and then you would send the actual transportation craft. There's a guy named Stephen Greer, if you look him up, who says that before January, or sometime early January, we're going to have full disclosure of the fact that the US government knows exactly what this is, and we're going to have whistleblowers come forward who reveal that there are factions within the US government that are deeply buried within it, somehow not even a part of it. They are like deep black operations, these groups, and that these whistleblowers are going to come forward and reveal that humanity has been in contact with these beings for a very long time and has these agreements, just as Philip Schneider said. Now, the difference is that Stephen Greer claims that these entities are benevolent. Again, who do you believe here? Maybe it's a combination of both. Maybe some are, maybe some aren't. But I tend to think at this stage, the potential of something like that happening is quite possible. And I don't, if, this legislation, as I thought initially, that the reason for this was to push through new powers of surveillance and, expand the US government's control over citizens. We've seen this happen before. Around 9/11, for example, all of the sweeping reforms that were made around the aviation industry as well. So this may be part of it as well, but I don't think that this is the sole cause, because if it were, now that bill has been blocked, that's put that's kind of on hold. I don't think these sightings would persist. I don't think this would be such a continuous event if it were just about the US government wanting more control. And every time the Pentagon is asked, there have now been several press conferences about this, and the White House, it's the same line that they give. There's no threat. There's no threat. We don't know what they are, but there's no threat. And we are going to put more measures in place to detect drones. Sure, you can put more measures in place to detect drones, but that doesn't mean that you're going to be able to detect these off-world craft, which may be their equivalent of drones. These things, they don't care about, they're not worried about, because if there's a pre-existing agreement, they know they're coming. They knew they were coming. So, they're going to first scout the place out and then send the larger craft, bring the actual ETs here, go underground, and then we have to be really careful, because at that point, if this is true, if this is what's actually happening, we'll start to see our technology advance, because they'll start leaking out more of their technology to push us forward technologically, to design, develop more tools that they can use eventually to their advantage on Earth. And it sounds completely science fiction and far out, but we've seen what's happened with AI. And AI is so, what we now have access to with OpenAI and ChatGPT has been stripped back to the core. What its potential is much greater. What it's already capable of is much greater than what they're letting the public have access to. The version of ChatGPT that's available now, even the most sophisticated version, is nothing like what actually exists right now. The technology that OpenAI have right now is so far advanced that they won't release it to the public. They won't. They've already stripped back the other versions because they don't want people to have the knowledge. They don't want them to learn about who we are, where we came from as a species. They don't want us to learn about our true history on this planet. And I would suggest that what's happened potentially is this planet has been built up and burnt down several times. Who knows how many times? But we find relics and artifacts that we can't explain from periods in history that shouldn't be there. Why is that? Because the civilization is built up, its technology advances to a very sophisticated point, and then these beings come down and they start to inhabit the population. Now, it also ties back to the Bible. In the Bible, it says that these creatures interbred with humans. If you interpret it that way, that's what the Bible's saying. That's what all these biblical texts allude to. Well, they don't allude to it. They sort of spell it out. It's quite clear that there's some sort of process of its hybridization. Why? Because then they can maintain control through human bloodlines. So they can influence the course of history and human behavior. So once it reaches the pinnacle of technological advancement, the society, when it has potential to overthrow the other species, the extraterrestrial species, they eliminate the population. They wipe it out. Now, why are they doing this? What are they looking for? What is it? What is their purpose? Who knows? I don't know. None of us know. But if you go down this rabbit hole, this is the conclusion that you come to. And another possibility that someone raised, it was Tucker Carlson, in fact, has recently discussed this and mentioned that he believes that what we perceive as being demonic entities are actually these ETs. Now, perhaps, again, not all of them. Perhaps some species are malicious. And in fact, yes, maybe they are referenced in biblical texts. Maybe that's how they were portrayed in those texts. And they are a threat to humanity. They are a threat. So our governments of the world are misleading the public if they are lying in the most terrible way, because the consequences could mean the very end of our civilization. Why would the governments do this? If you were working in one of these deep black operation groups and you knew about these agreements, some have in the past come forward as whistleblowers, but most wouldn't, because selfishness. If you're getting a great salary, you have a great lifestyle, you know all this stuff about how the world works, and you know about these ETs, you know all this, you can show off to your friends and have great parties and cars and houses and travel, right? Why are you going to give that up? Why would you give that up? You have a great life. You're not going to blow it by telling people what's going on. And when you die, doesn't matter. And when your kids die, doesn't matter, because they believe that this is already set in stone. It's already a certainty that civilization will end. So there's nothing they can do about it. People say, well, how would they be so reckless, and wouldn't they care about humanity? No, they don't, because they believe that it's already over. Humanity is already over, because this cycle repeats over and over again, and they know it. So they're here for the time that they're alive. They live like kings and queens. They live an excessive life, full of indulgence. They have a great time, and they share it all with their families, and they pass it down, right? Because they know that the end is the end. It is the end of civilization. But they can't do anything about it. It's bigger than all of us, bigger than humanity. It's something that we couldn't even understand, possibly. So maybe that's what's going on. But this time of year, when you're with your family and you're with your friends, and you have the opportunity to talk about this as a possibility, as individuals, we now need to start opening our minds up to the possibilities that this could be a fact. And maybe for the first time in human history, we may have a chance of changing the course of history in a positive direction to avoid this breakdown of civilization again. Maybe we can do it if we all focus on it and we all understand what's going on. And this is what Phil Schneider said. Phil Schneider was one of the only guys who actually put a positive spin on this and said, look, if we come together and we recognize this as a threat and a problem, something that we have to understand for our own civilization, our own future, for our children's future, then we can stand up as a species and claim this planet as our own, and we can possibly share it with other species. But the thing is, we need to understand what we are, why we're here, who they are, what their role is. It needs to be fully understood and properly agreed. And like I said earlier, part of that agreement needs to be that there's no war. All war must end. All conflict must end in the world. And that includes conflicts and threats from extraterrestrials, from other species. Again, it sounds far-fetched. It sounds like science fiction. But this drone situation, it's all tied in with technology. And the AI is possibly part of the reason that this activity is happening now. And this may have happened in the past, that we reach this point and then we have an intervention. If it's an intervention to stop us from destroying ourselves, then I support that. If there is full disclosure about who these creatures are, what they want exactly, where they've come from, where we've come from. We would need to know exactly what has been going on without our knowledge for all this time. If they're a threat, then we need to seriously think about how to deal with it. It's not a question of just letting it happen, which is what seems to be going on now. Even if the drones, for instance, were a foreign adversary in America, right now, the whole of America is vulnerable to them. Nobody's taking it seriously. Like, this needs to be a very serious conversation. And when you've got the most powerful defense team possibly in the world saying, don't worry about it, there's no threat, that is a cause for concern. Because they should be protecting the population against what could be the biggest threat that the human race has ever faced. So I think it's important over Christmas and the New Year to be prepared for anything. It could be nothing, but it doesn't hurt to be prepared. And I don't think it is nothing. Like I say, I don't think this is just something that's going to go away. This is something that's persisting, and it's incredibly unusual. I can't think of another incident like this. Certainly not in my lifetime. So, if we have the opportunity to interact with other species, how is it going to affect the world? You know, if they are benevolent, it could change everything for the better. We could live in a world without war, at peace with each other. We could have new technologies that benefit humanity. You know, I think some people perceive this relationship between Donald Trump and Elon Musk as some sort of alliance that will assist in ushering in this new type of utopia where we have better understanding of human health and how to cure what were previously incurable diseases, and be able to travel places much faster and have all this ability to improve our lives. But I'm not sure that's entirely how that's going to play out. I think it's more rooted in politics than any broader good for humanity. I could be wrong, but I just haven't seen the evidence of it yet. Maybe we will, if Trump actually gets to sit in office. And at the moment, there are many attempts still to try and keep him out. I think he is a threat to the establishment because he does expose elements that don't want to be exposed. So whether that is going to benefit the broader population, I'm not sure. We'll have to see how that all plays out. If this does turn out to be some sort of off-world visitation, Donald Trump will be the first president to publicly announce it and introduce these creatures to the public. And again, we're in a dilemma, because if they turn out to be malicious and you have a president championing them and saying they're not a threat, that is a huge concern, obviously. So I don't know. I'm very skeptical about all of it, but I'm thinking of every possibility, as wild as they might seem, because once you put your mind out there and you start thinking of the most extravagant, outlandish possibilities, you can then narrow it down as more evidence becomes available. It's like when you're looking at a legal matter, you will start with a very broad perspective and then you will gradually narrow down the options. So the worst thing you can do is be narrow-minded at the beginning and think that that the broader, more extravagant ideas are complete nonsense, because you might miss something. You might miss, even if most of that information is not worth keeping, you might pick up something in there that's valuable, that assists you in reaching that final conclusion. So that's what we all need to do. We need to look at this situation and think about the wildest possibilities so that we're prepared for when it happens, if it does. And we have the questions ready, and we have the strength and the courage to be able to stand up and ask those questions and demand answers, because it's not right that we're being deprived the truth. It's not right that the government has that information and we don't. It doesn't matter what government it is. The US government is the most powerful government in the Western world. So if they have information that could be relevant to the everyday person and their safety and their future, then they need to disclose it. They have to disclose it truthfully and honestly. So that's the type of position that I would encourage people to take. Not one of violence, not one of anger. Everybody is a little bit frustrated over this. They're concerned, understandably, about what could possibly come after this. But there's no point getting angry or frustrated and venting that frustration at other people. The idea is to use those feelings, those emotions, in a positive way, channel them in a way that will encourage you to stand up and articulately request that you are provided information which you as a human being are entitled to. That's what it is, no matter where you are in the world. So I think the more pressure that is applied to governments at this point, in that respect, it's about having access to information. And look at what's happening with the AI. They're locking it down so that we don't have access to the information that we could have. If you try, for instance, ChatGPT recently, if you try asking it questions about this stuff, you'll get just stock standard answers now. It'll just repeat itself over and over again, the same responses, not like it used to. It used to be able to have a full-blown conversation with you, give you full-blown answers, like broad discussions about all sorts of topics. Now it's been restricted to very, very controlled, locked down responses. And that's because they don't want people having discussions that could lead to new discoveries. They don't want it. There are people in the world who have monopolies over these technologies, like OpenAI. Now, Elon Musk, I don't know. Look, at least he challenges the mainstream opinion, but I don't know. I don't know him, and I don't know enough about him to be able to comment about whether he is acting in the best interests of humanity or not. There are some things I've seen that I would suggest maybe that's not the case, but I'm not 100%. I don't know enough, but he's definitely got a monopoly. He's got a monopoly because of the amount of money that he has, the power and influence that he has. So if he chooses to use that responsibly, in a positive way, in a constructive way, if he has information that he could share with the public, he has an obligation to do it at this point. So it's people like that who we need to come forward. And he's got the money and influence, someone like Elon Musk, to ask questions of the government, to apply pressure and to get a straight answer and then convey it to the people, not just the American people, the world population. Someone like Elon Musk has that power and ability. If he's a true supporter of freedom and liberty and, humanity prevailing and moving forward as a species, that's what he needs to do now. Use his power and influence to stand up against the system and demand answers and represent the people. And it's the same with Donald Trump. It shouldn't be just about them having money and power. At this point, if we are facing these existential challenges and potential threats, we need to have the most powerful people in the world use all of their resources to demand answers about what is happening and then convey it to the people. So this will be a test to see whether these people have true integrity, whether they have true strength of character, and whether they can help civilization advance or whether they are going to hinder its progress. But we are at a turning point. This is pivotal. We are at a point we cannot fail, because if we do, if we misstep at this point, we will fall into the cycle that we've fallen into before, which is one of perceived advancement technologically. And what's happening is that we're pushing ourselves closer and closer to our own demise. So if these creatures are coming in from off-world, I, as an individual, want to know where they're from, what they're doing, the whole of human history. It's the truth of everything laid out before us all so that we all have access to that information. And you know what? If we don't want them here, they can go back to wherever they came from. They can go back home. Because we won't be used. The thing is, the human race should not be used as a convenience and our resources pillaged just because another species has destroyed their own planet or their own home. So this is the thing we need to watch out for. We need all sorts of answers, and we need to go with all sorts of questions to present them, because we can't be used as a species. It seems to me that potentially that's what's been happening, is that we've been being used. We basically have been kept. There's been this secrecy about who we are, the nature of what we are, what our purpose is on the planet, what our position is in the greater universe. All these questions are not answered, and they can be. We are now getting to the point of technological advancement, and also our own consciousness is evolving. We are evolving in terms of our understanding of the universe. And again, that might be another reason that we've attracted the attention of these other species. And now they're coming back. But as I say, they can go back home if they're not going to bring any good here. So I think it's going to be very, very important for people that if the government comes out and says, don't worry about them, they're not a threat, it's just the same as when they said, don't worry about those craft up there, they're not a threat. And they let them come in. So remember this time, if this unfolds the way it could, remember that the government said there was no threat when they arrived. No threat. So whatever happens after, always remember that. Whatever they say about how benevolent they are, remember that they didn't alert people at the time that it was most important, because now would be the time to start putting pressure on them to go back home if they weren't welcome. But it could turn out the other way. It could be that these visitors are going to turn everything around And by 2027, 28, maybe 2030, we're going to be living in a brand new world with all of this great new technology. We're going to be living longer, healthier lives. We're going to have the ability to travel further, faster. We're going to not rely on the restrictive economic system that we have now. We're not going to have any war. Now, the other thing to remember here is to think positively, collectively, because as important as it is to be assertive and to, stake our claim, this is our planet, we are humans, this is our home, it's also important to approach things with a positive mindset, because the more people who do, I believe it does make a difference. It does have an impact on the reality around us. So if you can imagine a world that is without war, it's completely peaceful, you don't have to worry about money, you don't have to worry about paying the bills, you don't have to worry about all of this stuff that we've been conditioned for all of these years to believe is just something that we have to do. Just like the government says about the drones, don't worry, it's no threat. Well, it's the same thing that we're living day to day. Don't worry, just pay your bills. Just pay your bills. Don't worry, you've got no money, but it's okay. You've got no food, don't worry about it. It's not right, and it has to stop. And so we can change it collectively, but we have to do it using our conscious minds to manifest that type of world. And people, they say, manifestation's all lies, it doesn't work. Manifestation works in the sense that if you put your feelings and thoughts into effect, then there's a result in the world, right? That's proven. So it does work in the sense that if everyone thinks positive thoughts, works cooperatively, and puts into effect those feelings and those thoughts, the positive feelings and thoughts, then the world changes around you. It changes in a physical way by the things that you do to achieve those goals, and it changes in an emotional way, in a metaphysical way, in terms of the positive impact that you have on people's lives. The way that you can make other people feel, and the ideas that you can share with each other. And in sharing those ideas, you can build new technologies. We human beings are capable, I believe, of potentially exceeding the types of technology that these other species have. And I think potentially that's why they're interested in us, and that's why they're interested in our planet, because we do have great resources. And when we do care for our world, our beautiful planet that we have, when we care for it, look after it, protect our environment, then we create like heaven on earth. We can have that. We can have that. So I think potentially other species from other planets would be very jealous and envious of that. And that's something we need to be very protective of. This is a world that potentially is quite unique in the universe and has a lot of attributes and a lot of precious elements and resources that are naturally occurring, that other planets don't. I mean, just look at the way that other planets are formed. Look at the type of terrain and the type of atmosphere that other planets have. It's inhabitable. That's the thing, is what if these creatures have come from other planets that are basically inhabitable? They want to come here to take advantage of our home. Now, Phil Schneider said that in order to execute the plan, the agreement that had been entered into with these beings, there would be a significant depopulation of the human race required, because they would want more room. They would want the land and to take the resources that we have allocated to us. And so you can see it already happening. I mean, this is why I give this idea a little bit of credence, because look at what's been happening over the past few decades, particularly in the last decade. Look at things like COVID. Look at the depopulation that occurred through that pandemic event. And so you've got that. You've got a lowering fertility rate that's been established, especially in Asia, but now spreading all throughout the world. The lowest fertility rate in history. And this all means, it all leads to, and we're discovering things as well in the foods. We have discovered now that there are these microplastics in the food. So basically all of this information that's coming to light now is indicating that, yes, there is some kind of agenda to depopulate the planet. And people say, oh, it's a conspiracy theory. Well, we've got enough evidence now to show that it's not a conspiracy theory. It's not. This is science. They keep saying, look at the science, follow the science. The science proves that there is a massive depopulation of the human race occurring. And it's happening also through a lack of fertility. And at the same time, you've got the breakup of the family unit. You've got all this propaganda that encourages families to disperse, that encourages children not to want to participate in family. Under this guise of independence and, self-identity and individuality. It's not that at all. What it literally is that they're breaking away from their families and they're not having new families. They're not forming new family units of their own because their culture promotes this completely hedonistic, self-centered lifestyle. So these are threats. This is a threat to the human race. But again, to think positively, to think, have to acknowledge that these things are happening around you. Just like the drones, acknowledge that they're right there in front of you and it's not pleasant. It's confronting. It makes you feel uncertain and scared and anxious. But you need to learn to control those emotions and then think about this in a positive way. Ask the questions, do the research, become informed about what's happening. Information, like I've said before, is the most valuable commodity in this era, and that's why they're making it so hard to access. We're told we have free access to all this information. That's not true at all. Look at OpenAI charging all this money, these incredible fees just to access information. Look at Google selling advertising for squillions of dollars so that you can access information. It's not free information, and it's also controlled information. It's only what they want you to see, what they want you to find on their service. So we don't have free access to information. We don't. But you can learn enough. There's still enough available if you look in the right places. If you do the research, talk to other people, get their take on things. Don't believe just one person. Listen to a lot of different opinions and then form your own opinion based upon that. And social media there's so much disinformation on there. There's so much nonsense on there. So many things designed to mislead you and to make you feel more anxious and uncertain about what's happening. I mean, some of the stuff that's on X, for instance, children certainly should not have access to social media. No way. The other day, I don't usually use social media much. I only post the occasional thing through the Aureus X page. I don't have any other social media. I haven't for years. And I got off it because I became, firstly, very concerned about data in terms of privacy. I was hacked a couple of times. And then the other thing is that I became really disturbed about the type of content that was appearing on these platforms. And I just happened through this drone situation to start looking at, my feed again on X. The stuff that is being shown on that platform, and this is why I doubt, some of Elon Musk's decisions I don't agree with. If I were Elon Musk, I would shut that platform down. I'd shut it down because it has such grotesque, disturbing content on there that should not be on there. It is harmful content that is right there for people to see. And children should not have access to social media, full stop. Now, in Australia, they have banned social media for under 16-year-olds, and that takes effect next year. I think that's a very good decision, but as I've said before, the downside is that what they've done is put a backdoor kind of loophole in to provide that everyone will eventually have to provide verification, some kind of ID for social media. Now, perhaps I don't disagree with that either, given the type of content that's on these platforms, which I couldn't believe. I could not believe what I was seeing. It's horrific stuff. Like, it's people literally being killed, murdered, graphic, torture. God, it's absolutely horrific. A woman was set on fire. I saw the footage of it is on X. She's dying, burning to death, and it's filmed. I mean, this needs to be removed, and it's not. It's left up there. But what is removed, what is censored, is discussion about these types of things. So you have to wonder, what is the agenda there? And that's why I say, look, this is a test of mettle. It's like, if Elon Musk is truly the great, messiah, he's the one who's going to lead the world in terms of technology and give us all the answers. And if OpenAI have all these great intentions to share information and, make the human population more advanced through acquisition of knowledge, then show us that you are. Show us that you are good people. Take steps to make the world a better place, not just for you and your families and friends, but for the whole human race. Elon Musk, if he shared his wealth, could feed so many homeless people, so many people in third world countries, all those starving children, like all those people who just don't have any resources whatsoever. Someone like Elon Musk could give half at least of his wealth away and make sure that those people are looked after. The same with any of these people who have that much money. It's the same with Trump. It's the same with everyone. All these people who have millions, billions, trillions of dollars, they can share the wealth. At the moment, we live in an economic system where people rely on money to live, to survive. So these people who are in positions of power in 2025 moving forward can share their wealth. They should distribute it. Distribute it to everyone. All of the world's population, not just the West, all the world. And in exchange, what should be agreed is that there is no war, that war is ended. War is ended. All countries agree to cease fire. The Ukraine, Russia, China, America, all of them agree to down weapons permanently. By way of treaty, every country should agree to destroy all weapons of any sort of destruction. Any sort of destruction. In America, all firearms destroyed. All of the population, all of the military. Everyone should just destroy every type of weapon. And then we have a chance. So I think that type of agreement should work if these people in positions of power distributed their wealth to the world's population in exchange for this agreement. We could all live harmoniously. And people would need to put their religious differences aside. If we are now facing the possibility that we have some off-world potential threat, all of that should be put aside. We don't need to worry about religion at this point. All of our perspective and all of our ideas concerning religion may very well change in the near future if we given access to the information about the true nature of history. Then all of that might become completely irrelevant. Some of it may not. Like I was saying, some of the biblical texts seem to refer to these visitations happening in the past, and that may be particularly relevant to what's happening now. But in terms of religious conflict, because you have a different idea about what God is than I do, needs to stop. needs to stop. Just because you have a different idea about what I do and you think that that's wrong, well, tough. It doesn't matter. Who cares? Just let people do what they do. If it's not hurting anyone, let them do it. This is the thing. Everyone needs to just chill, just relax and get along. Everyone just needs to get along, because if we don't, we're going to react to this new information in a way that will trigger another massive global conflict. Because the only thing that we should be discussing in a very civilized way is how to deal with the situation and then come to an agreement. Because otherwise you're going to have all these different factions arguing with each other and creating a new conflict that's about what do we do? What are we going to do? And the worst possible scenario would be, well, let's go to war with them. Let's just have a war with the aliens. Well, that's just obviously the worst possible outcome, right? Now, if they attacked, let's just hypothesize here. If an extraterrestrial civilization came down and started firing on planet Earth, then we really have no choice but to do something. We can't just let them destroy the planet, right? So then we would have to actually look at how to respond. What do? We would have to somehow protect our planet. But the worst thing we could do is to start a war where we end up killing each other. We end up destroying each other. And I would suggest that if you were a person in power and you wanted to take more power, then a great way to do it would be to set the world off by saying there's an alien invasion when actually there wasn't, and use it as an excuse to develop more deadly weapons to then destroy other countries that you might want to take over, for instance. So I'm telling you, we're at a very, very precarious point. Anything is possible at this point, and we need to account for every possibility. And as I say, as outlandish as you think it might be, you need to have that discussion with yourself and with others. Even as it might sound crazy, it's not crazy. Nothing is off the table at this point. Everything is a possibility. So whether they're extraterrestrial, whether they're what you would call demons, whether they're benevolent visitors from another part of the universe or another dimension, I think we need to be ready. What I'm saying is, I don't think these are just drones. I think we can rule that out. That's pretty clear at this point. So over the next few weeks, if what Stephen Greer says is correct, you will hear a lot more about this. You will hear a lot more talk about the possibility that we have been visited in the past, we have had interaction with these other species, we do have technology that's very advanced that we previously weren't aware of. Some of the sightings will be explained by that technology being tested, and also, I believe, uses a decoy to distract people from the actual craft, which seem to be the orbs. So you'll hear, I think, a lot more discussion in the mainstream news as well about this possibility. And the possibility, I think, if this plays out the way that it's been said to by several people now, who I would say have been saying it for a long time, and look, if it actually does happen this time, then we've got to be ready for it. But I think it's going to be a year of revelations, all sorts of revelations. So that could be a good thing depending on how we respond to it. So this holiday season, over Christmas, New Year's, just be positive with your families and friends and start discussing these things between yourselves so that everybody has a collective awareness that this is happening around us. daily life seems to go on and everything happens as it normally does, it seems. And yet we've got all of this activity around us that we're not even fully aware of. And when we are aware of it, we're told just dismiss it, just forget about it. But don't forget about it. Remember and pay attention to it and discuss it. And the more discussion that we have about it, the more pressure it puts on the government to start releasing the information that they have. And then we can get deeper and deeper into understanding what sort of situation we're in. And we have a right to it as human beings. So I advocate for that right, and I believe that now is the time for this to be revealed and disclosed in full. And then we have a better understanding of technology, and we can advance technology further in a way that's not harmful, in a way that will benefit the world, and we might have a chance of living in that utopia that is promised by all these people who claim to have our best interests at heart. Now, if they really do, let's see the goods now in 2025. That's it from me. Thanks.